Manchester United is still very much interested in Carlos Baleba from Brighton, and despite him having a very frustrating season with Brighton this season, I feel that he's still going to be a very viable player for Manchester United. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about if he's still a perfect player for Manchester United because he has endured a very frustrating season. Carlos Baleba of this season is definitely not the player that we saw last season, and personally for me, I still feel that for a player that showed such potential last season, it is definitely impossible for him to automatically become a very bad player. So in today we are going to be running through his characteristics and what Manchester United obviously needs in the midfield, because he need a very good characteristics in the midfield position, because for a very long time Manchester United have not really had a midfielder that has a very good engine, that can cover a lot of grounds with pace and intensity, that is very good in creating lots of defensive actions like tackles and interception. Of course, except Casemiro, we have really not had a player in their prime for a very long time that is very good on the ball, that is very good in progression, that is also very good in covering lots of space and carrying out a lot of defensive action. And that is definitely what Carlos Baleba brings for you this season. But of course, in this season, you know that he has played a total of 22 games, which is a total of 1,549 minutes, and that's probably approximately 17 games this season compared to starting 31 games last season out of 33. That tells you that he has not really been his best this season, and I think his best games this season has come against Chelsea, Newcastle and Wolves. And in today's video, we're going to be running through his performances in those games and how he's really going to affect Manchester United both in different phases of the game. So talking about the Chelsea game, that is definitely one of the games where Baleba has played 90 minutes this season, because he has rarely played a 90 minutes game this season. So of course, that's definitely a game where he started, he played 90 minutes. And one thing I was really impressed about Carlos Baleba is his pressing, is his intensity, is his mobility, athleticism. This is what I really like about him, because he's a very intense player, he's a very serious player. If you look at Carlos Baleba on the pitch, he's a very intentional player. I don't think he jokes about his job. And this is what I really like about him, and this is something that is the kind of professional that we need to replace Casemiro, because of course, if you're getting a player to replace Casemiro, then you need to get a really young player that is very good, that is very intense. You need to get a mini Casemiro. So talking about the Chelsea game, he was one of the players that made Brighton to be able to press man for man, because of course you know that in the Premier League now many coaches resort to pressing man to man. Baleba was definitely one of the reasons that made Brighton be able to press man to man in that Chelsea game, because he was so intense. And I'm going to show you some few examples on why he was very good in the pressing in that game. But first of all, you have to realize that he had 15 defensive actions in that game. He also had 10 recoveries. That tells you that he covered every blade of grass against Chelsea, and this is something that we want to see consistently from our midfield, also given that we're going to be playing in multiple competition and we're going to be playing against very good teams, very physical teams, very technical teams. So we need players to be covering every blade of grass, and you could see that Manchester United this season, we have struggled with compactness, we have struggled with defending the spaces, defending wide spaces, defending pocket spaces, and Carlos Baleba is definitely that player that is going to help us in covering those wide spaces, those pocket spaces, and it's also going to make us to be very compact in the midfield. So in the first example, you see that in the press, of course, he pushes up and then he presses the goalkeeper, and then he presses until the goalkeeper gives the ball to him. And when the goalkeeper gives the ball to him, you could see that Brighton almost scored in that situation, because he was constantly pressing. And even when he was pressing, you could see after pressing, the ball went back to the goalkeeper. It was as if he has lost all hope, but he was also still alert. Ball came to him, gave it to the Brighton man, but they didn't score. Also, in another situation, you could see that Brighton are about to press. One of the contexts you need to put in place when you're talking about pressing is your recovery, your ability to recover, because most teams, of course, have this ability to press, but definitely most of the times in the Premier League, when you press, your press is definitely going to be beaten, because of course you're playing against technical players, you're playing against good players. So of course, definitely majority of the times your press is going to be broken. So you could see in this situation, but of course, Carlos Baleba picks up Casemiro in the press, and you could see the moment the press was being broken, Carlos Baleba immediately sprinted with a very high speed to win the ball back, and this is something that we got. And of course, you could also remember that Baleba was not marking the player that he recovered the ball from in the press. So that tells you that he was doing the job for two men. So Carlos Baleba is the player that has this energy to even do multiple jobs for multiple players, because you could see he was picking up Casemiro in the press, and the next minute, the moment the press is being broken, he ran at full speed and recovered the ball. And recovery is something that has been underappreciated in football recently, because of course, it's not just about pressing and wasting energy. You also need to sprint back when needed to try to stop counter-attacks, and this is something that Carlos Baleba is definitely going to bring for Manchester United. And then we want to talk about his performance against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Of course, he didn't finish the game. He had just 77 minutes in the game. But I'm going to point out why Baleba is very important for Brighton and why he's also going to replicate similar form for Manchester United. You could see that Manchester United for a very long time, we have not had a lot of press-hesitant midfielders. I think midfielders recently that usually come deep to take the ball are definitely Kobe Mino and Bruno Fernandes. And of course, you know that they are not the best press resistance in the world. But Carlos Baleba is definitely somebody that is going to bring that press resistant nature into Manchester United. But before we talk about that, you're going to realize that he also had a lot of defensive contribution against Wolverhampton Wanderers. He had 15 defensive contribution. He had 10 recoveries. He was absolutely wonderful. If you look at the map, you're going to find out that his hit map was he was all over the midfield. No midfielder could compete with Baleba against Wolf, and this is something that I really like about him. Whenever he plays a game, even if he plays bad in that game, his ball recovery, his hit map, his ability to sprint with athleticism, just like in N'Golo Kante, to cover all the blade of grass, he doesn't really disappoint. And I could see, in terms of the press resistant nature of Baleba, you could see in the Wolf game, he was constantly going to receive the ball from the goalkeeper, and before he receives the ball, you could see that he's going to scan multiple times to make sure that he's very free and he's in a safe place to receive the ball. And this is something that I really appreciate, and this is the kind of players we need. And this is also the reason why I've spoken about Matheus Fernandes a lot of time at Tactical Trafford, because he's also very press resistant. But Carlos Baleba is not just press resistant. When he receives the ball, the space at which he moves with the ball is absolutely incredible. He's somebody that can progress the ball from the defense to the attack in split seconds. And this is something we need because, of course, Manchester United is a counter-attacking side. So if you have a midfielder that can consistently demand the ball, drop deep, scans properly before he receives the ball, and then transform defense to attack, it is definitely going to be a plus for us. So overall, I think, of course, Carlos Baleba is definitely, for me, I don't think he should be the starting defensive midfielder for Manchester United because, of course, I think he needs a competition in the defensive midfield position because, of course, if you're going to get Baleba and you're going to start him in every game, you're going to find out that, of course, he's still very raw and there's going to be a lot of inconsistencies in his game. So instead of getting Carlos Baleba alone, we definitely need to get two defensive midfielder because, of course, Casemiro and one of is going to leave. So we need two number four that is definitely going to be competing. And then with that way, I feel Carlos Baleba is going to bring out his full potential. But if he's definitely the starting defensive midfielder where he's not getting pushed, he's not getting worried. So of course, he might not really give us his full ability. But in terms of what Carlos Baleba is going to bring to Manchester United, I think he's really going to do more than people really expect. So I want you guys to drop your thoughts on the comment section on if Carlos Baleba is going to be a great player for Manchester United. I want you guys to like, to share, to subscribe to Tactical Trafford as we making more videos on more players. See you guys in my next video. Ciao.